Pay attention.
I think it's time we started looking for a psychiatrist.
He
And
didn't.
now,
And he
this.
hasn't had any alcohol in 5 months.
Both are from horror films. Both are contextually similar. A character is moving towards a place where something terrifying is about to unfold. Yet somehow, the music in The Exorcist feels almost absent. So I recently rewatched The Exorcist, and like many true crime films, it does something strange. With every viewing, you begin to notice things you somehow missed before. And this time, what struck me the most was the music, or rather, the lack of it. The music is so minimal that it almost feels like we watched the entire film without a score. Or maybe it's more accurate to say we never care about the music at all. In fact, the entire exorcism scene, the most terrifying part of the film, is almost completely silent. And that feels ironic because modern horror films relies heavily on music to generate dread.
My son has felt the call of sin. You see what that gets you? But the good
Yet The Exorcist, the film that gave arguably the most iconic horror theme of all time, barely uses it. The theme appears only twice. Once, when Chris is simply walking home, nothing scary happens. And again, during a short hospital montage where doctors are calmly discussing what might be wrong with Reagan. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. So the question becomes why? And even more importantly, why does the film still scares us deeply? The answer to the first question lies in two things. First, the story itself.
The Exorcist is based on a true story, a case that took place in the Washington area, actually in Silver Springs, Maryland, in 1948 or 1949.
Second, and more importantly, the director. William Friedkin began his career in early 60s, making documentaries long before he moved into feature films. He brought with him what he called induced documentary realism. Location shooting, natural lighting, unpolished performances, and a refusal to dramatize reality.
It is possible to use documentary technique in a fictional story.
Friedkin didn't want this story to feel like a horror film. He wanted it to feel like something that could actually happen. And when he used music, he didn't want it to guide our emotions. He wanted to feel like a cold hand resting on your shoulder, quite distant and impossible to shake. That's the first part. The second part, why it still scares us, is best described by Roger Ebert in his 1973 review. He called The Exorcist a frontal assault. The film intentionally removes background music from its most crucial moments and replaces it with brutally realistic sound designs.
I did a lot of reading about what kind of sound, for example, works on people's nerves, which came out of my research into what sort of sounds, in terms of pitch and volume, work on people's psyche.
Medical machines, breathing, footsteps, growl. It doesn't conscious us, it forces us to face horror as if it's happening in a real house, in a real city, on a real street, because reality has no background music. And it's not just the sound. The film constantly reminds us of the real world. When Father Karras says,
A demon or something. How do they get an exorcism?
Well, the first thing, I'd have to get him into a time machine and get him back to the 16th century.
I didn't get you.
Well, it just doesn't happen anymore, Miss McNeil.
when doctors search for medical explanation, when science fails quietly, the supernatural doesn't arrive with spectacle, it intrudes. What's remarkable is that such a simple decision to keep the sound minimal, restrained, and almost indifferent amplifies the psychological horror to an extraordinary degree. The Exorcist doesn't scare us visually as much as it does mentally.
I believe that The Exorcist will be, the novel, will be regarded years from now. The Exorcist happens to be a great story. That's where it begins and ends.
It doesn't scream, it whispers, and that whisper stays with you long after the film and its